It's honored to be here today. You know, one of the things that I have a chance, alhamdulillah, to travel around, and I see and I get to meet and greet different communities. And there's one thing that I notice, especially, you know, with our communities, especially with young men. Now, if you look at this room right now, I mean, look at the geographics of who's in this room right now. You got like 700 sisters and about 8 brothers, right? And this is something that, unfortunately, we see a trend in that. A lot of our young men, our brothers, are not as actively involved in the da'wah. They're not people who are giving back as much, you know, especially when it comes, now, when you start looking for a spouse, when you start looking for a person you want to marry, you know, sisters will ask me all the time, my brother, do you know anyone you can recommend? And I will look at all the brothers I know in my age category and I'll be like, nope. Right? Because you have a lot of young men, you know, and they grow to be, you know, 25, 30 years old, but they are still boys. Okay, don't agree too much now. What's going on? It's trying to make me look bad. Seriously, we have a lot of emotionally immature, you know, unfortunately, a lot of the messaging that young men receive means that we have a very skewed understanding of what it means to be a man. Masculinity for us has become something very confusing. And just as the world now, you know, especially with women's rights and all the advancements in you know, the way we think about women, just as women have progressed, it seems like men now are becoming more confused. We don't really know our place, right? And it's unfortunate because, you know, when we look at the example of the Prophet ﷺ, we find the example of a perfect man. He was a man who exemplified every characteristic, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. What do you say when I say sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? Never be stingy to send salawat ala nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And you know, there's a thing that we're taught as young men. As young men, I was a young man, I was taught, first and foremost, that you are not allowed to cry. Right? You guys have heard that before? Men are not allowed to cry. This to us is the epitome of masculinity, that as a man, you're not allowed to show emotion. And this is so ajib, so strange, subhanAllah. You know, when I was in high school, when I was young, for about like probably 5 or 6 years, I never shed one tear, I never cried. You know how hard that is to do? That's like actively denying your fitrah, your natural, you know, disposition. And the moment you do feel those emotions come on, you have like emotional constipation. You can't control it. You just start freaking out, right? Because it's not normal. And this idea of men being, you know, this particular figure of this hard, masculine, we don't smile, we don't laugh with, you know, our spouses. We're not people who show emotion. We don't care about other people. This is completely incorrect. And this is not from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So I want to share this poem with you, inshallah. And it's dedicated to the young men. Because just like a lot of you here, you're younger than me, you're my younger brothers, I want to prepare you for what it means to be a man. I have a son myself, and I'm trying to raise him the right way, to be a true man. And so I hope you can benefit from this piece, inshallah. It's called Be a Man. I heard them say that big boys don't cry. But don't dry your eyes, little guy, and realize these ain't nothing but lies. Real men do cry. Because when tears fall from your eyes, it's a sign that your heart is still alive. So just be a man. But how? When masculinity and femininity have become more confusing than the Trinity, we teach little boys to become tough and be soldiers in our wars, but get upset when their aggression has them breaking down doors, and still society cannot decide if we even really like nice guys, because they always finish last and are always treated like trash, and we have no problems dancing to the music that objectifies women, but can't understand why our men are addicted to pornographic images, and we keep singing the same old love songs when really our love is gone. More than half of marriages ending in divorce, the other half just barely holding on. And this is no bull feces. Men are becoming an endangered species, replaced by a generation of lost boys who don't ever want to grow old. But you're a man, and you're supposed to be bold. Unless your mother tells you otherwise, and you just do as you are told and eat your vegetables and show the world you ain't no sissy. And the first chance that you get, make sure you lose your virginity, because like any good soldier, we are defined by our weapons. And a man who doesn't fire his will always have you second guessing, because yes, it's a man's world. But we all came from the womb of of a girl from a room in a world where we grew in like pearls. We were groomed and with love from a clot in the lungs and the tongues, and we sprung in the young from among everyone. So a son would still be nothing without his mom, and Adam was not complete until he finally had Eve. And a man is not a king if his woman is not a queen. So respect this very gift and do not bite the hand that feeds, because to disrespect a woman is to disrespect humanity. Like when Adam and Eve made the mistake of eating from the forbidden tree, Adam's first instinct was to ask Allah for forgiveness instantly, because real men accept responsibility and can admit when they are wrong, while boys are always making excuses, singing that same old song. And notice Adam never abused Eve physically, emotionally, or verbally. He just took it like a man, because that's how a man's supposed to be. And being a man is so much more than puberty, because any male can help make a baby, but only a man can teach him to succeed. And a man is not always rich, but real men do not like to beg. Real men would rather sweat and gain little than live in someone else's debt. And they know why they exist. As Allah taught Adam the names of all things, because for men knowledge is power and the basis of self-esteem. And you can say, I don't know, because sometimes you just won't. And it's okay to ask for help, because real men don't need to struggle all alone. I will teach my son that true strength only comes from God. And humility does not mean you're weak. In fact, it means you understand exactly who you are. The strongest one is not the one who can wrestle or lift heavy weights. The strongest one is the one who can hold his temper in a fit of rage. And real men have courage. But it doesn't mean they don't get scared. It just means that when the going gets tough, you know they'll always be there. And yes, it's okay to cry. And not because you're weak or wrong, but because perhaps you have been strong for just way too long. So have strength in His plans and leave the rest in His hands. You don't have to be Superman. You just have to be a man.